You're listening to 88.7 WLUW Chicago Sound Alliance, broadcasting from the campus of Loyola University. It's live from the Heartland, featuring Michael James, Katy Hogan, and Thom Clark. Today's guests are Glenn Reedus, veteran editor, Kacie Smith from State Matters, and Funkadesi. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
Go outside. Oh, yes, my Sam.
Oh, Katy, you could be on that record.
Well, we all love Sam Cooke. Kacie Smith is here with us. She is speaking for State Matters, which I got to know of because of one of our fellow young activists in our ward who is part of your group. Turned me on to it, and it's we just have to start at the start. What the heck is State Matters?
Yeah, so we are a young nonprofit. We're 1 year old, so we're pulling up on the furniture and gnawing on it. And essentially, it really came from a group of artists and tech folks, mostly in my age range, so around the 30 somewhat, who realized that we really have no idea how government works, and our civics education, if we got one, did not prepare us. And started kind of diving in and trying to get more involved in Illinois. And it was really freaking difficult. Like, it was really hard. Like, there's not a lot of information. It's not easy to get. You have this easy question. We're like the Google generation. I have a question, I'm just going to Google it. Yeah. You Google it, and then you're like, oh, my God, I'm more confused than I was when I first asked the question. So we got together, and we're like, how do we try and kind of parse all this information? And so what we do is we work with artists across the city, across the state, to create content that does just that explains how the heck state and local government works.
Artists explaining government.
Yes.
This is a concept I didn't really expect to hear.
Was that video that Chance the Rapper did connected to you guys?
It is not, but
but that kind of thing?
Yes. I will say that we are nonpartisan. So we're not quite throwing quite as much shade as Chance, but we are snarky, right? You can be snarky and still nonpartisan.
Yeah, you're young.
Yeah, exactly.
Snarky.
It's all snarky. Yeah, and thank you for wishing us good luck on the nonpartisan. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's tough though, I will say, like, as like a younger person, I do think that a lot of us don't necessarily strongly associate with a particular political party.
Thank you.
And I think that that's a reality, right? That a lot of people are looking beyond just party loyalty for answers to how to make government better and how to make society better, and don't necessarily look and see a D after someone's name and immediately think that they're the savior.
Right.
So you get a textbook and it explains the executive branch and the legislative branch and the judicial dance.
Yeah.
What is it in that that's not getting you to understand how government works?
Yeah, I mean...
And how do you change that?
My joke is that all we came out with was there are 3 branches of government, right? Like most folks...
It's kind of a small tree, isn't it?
Right, exactly. But, I mean, oh, man, the questions... What's amazing to me is, one, how much as adults we are often predisposed to try and pretend like we know things. So, for example, my roommate, who I will not say his name, but for those who know me know who he is. It's not Cliff, by the way, who is a very educated other roommate of mine. The other roommate. We had some canvassers come to our door to talk to us about zoning. We live in the 35th Ward. And he had this entire conversation with these canvassers about zoning. And let me tell you something. He knows absolutely nothing about zoning. He had no idea what they were talking about, but he faked it. He faked it really well. And those canvassers walked away from that door going, oh, yeah, I just met, the people in this neighborhood. They really know what's up. No, he just didn't want to look stupid, right? He just didn't want to look dumb to these folks.
So does anybody know what was said in this conversation?
No, I mean, I was laughing and, recording it, so I probably have that recording
I'm sorry,
somewhere.
but that reminds me of Jimmy Kimmel making people look stupid on the street because they, in fact, are.
Yeah, but I would argue with that knowing about zoning in Chicago is not necessarily, that is not information that most people have,
That's
right?
true.
That is
even though it should be
a step above. It should be, but
right.
It's not. I would argue that it's not necessarily our fault, right? It's not our fault that we don't know.
Okay, that's the other thing that young people come up, and it's totally not your fault, is thinking that there's a fault to be found everywhere. because you've seen politicians act the fool and say, that's so-and-so's fault.
Right.
If we stop pointing fingers and just go, who's accountable for what here?
Right.
How can we be accountable?
Right.
Since it's our government.
Right.
It's supposed to be.
Well, and I think that is a big part of what I'm interested in with State Matters. Beyond, I mean, a piece of what we do is voter education and looking at elections, but a lot of it is actually more that question of like, you know, the buzzword is like holding people accountable, holding our elected representatives accountable. But you can say that all day long. I don't know what that means. Does that mean just call them, like tell them who I am? Like, if we don't know how the system works, if we don't know who we're supposed to be holding accountable for what, or what the most, effective ways of holding people, or what even it means to hold someone accountable. Does it mean just waiting until the next election and voting someone out? I would say no. I think that we need to be more involved throughout the process between elections. But it's really hard, and we all have like 3 jobs. So how do we make this an easier lift for more folks to be more casually involved, right? I'm not, I don't think it's sustainable to turn
So
everybody
you focus
into
on the
activists.
state.
Yes.
Basically, it's about educating the voters about what the state government does.
Exactly.
And the aspects and the parts of the state government, because a lot of people in the city, a lot of people know a lot more about what's going on in Chicago City Council than in the state legislature. They may follow like legalization of marijuana and who the governor is, but who
That's
knows
about
what's
it.
going on in the state.
So can I ask what role did you play, State Matters play, in the both the primaries last March and then the general in the midterm election,
So we created a
which
bunch.
we chose a new governor with?
Yes, so we created a bunch of content explaining the many different roles and especially focusing on how the heck to vote for all those judges and why not to skip the judges section. And then we actually encouraged people and hosted ballot parties across the state. So gave people information to be able to host, again, nonpartisan parties where they got their people together, researched their ballot, figured out what the heck all those offices were, what the heck all these candidates are up to, and also how to vote. So that is what we did for the midterms. We've also been doing that for the Chicago city elections as well this time around, with helps from some fabulous resources like Ballot Ready, who's also based here in Chicago, that we partnered with on our midterm efforts, and then also the fabulous new Shy.vote, which we also love, though you do kind of, it's a little harder to parse through, but I think it's a really, really great resource too.
And while you're nonpartisan, you're having an election night party.
We are having an election night party. For those of you that aren't connected to any of these candidates, none of you cool kids, we are having an election night party along with Chicago United for Equity, Reform for Illinois, and Generation All. And it is at Untitled Supper Club on Tuesday night, so come check it out. You can find more information about that on our Facebook
Untitled
page.
is the name of the joint?
I think so. I'm going to be honest, I didn't put together those logistics. Shout out to Mary Miro from
And a
Reform for
brief
Illinois.
word on the Vote Equity 2019.
Yeah, so I'm also a 2019 fellow with Chicago United for Equity, which is specifically working on race equity here in Chicago. There was just a forum with my favorite of all time titles, which is Plans Not Platitudes, which I think is great when thinking about looking at these candidates and talking about race equity, is okay if you say like, hey, how do you feel about black and brown people? They're all going to be like, I love black and brown people, but then when it comes to actual policies that affect black and brown people's lives, well, it gets a little shakier.
Good point.
So how do we really assess and hold accountable our elected representatives in this city, specifically on race equity? And if you don't know what race equity means, if you're listening to me and you're like, what is this hibbly-gibbly? Check out Chicago United for Equity. They have some really great resources.
Q.org.
Probably. I think that is their website. But also check out the voter guide. It's voteequity.org. It has there was over 200 race equity policies that were voted on throughout the city and prioritized. We now have the top 50, and all that went into questionnaires, and now we have all the candidates' responses.
Kacie Smith of State Matters, thank you very much for joining us today, and good luck on Election Day and having more informed voters show up at the polls.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much for
good
having
work.
me.
Thank
You've been
you for
listening to
coming
Live
up.
from the Heartland on
Of course.
WLUW 88.7 FM. Please check us out on youtube.com/Heartland Media and hold on to your seats, folks. We're about ready to rock your morning with Funkadesi.